Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew,
Dustin Rea.
and today we are going to talk about AI. So Dustin reached out and had some interesting ideas to share about how he believes the landscape may have changed on AI, and maybe some long-held beliefs on our show even may have shifted as technology has shifted. So Dustin, I'll let you kick it off with your thoughts here.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess I'll start with just some definitions so that we're able to kind of get everybody on the same shared vocabulary. So right now, obviously, vibe coding is kind of the trend. This is the big term that we see on social media. I also see another term kind of used in that same area about like agentic development or AI empowered developers or the AI enabled developer, kind of all this different stuff. So I want to make a distinction between these two things. So when I talk about vibe coding, I think that is specifically like I'm chatting into the chat bot and getting out whatever it outputs, but I don't necessarily have a structure or like a full definition defined or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I think what I'm talking about today is more on the other side, which is on the agentic development, AI empowered developers side, which is where you're working with some type of like agentic coding tool locally, like Claude Code or Cursor or kind of whatever you're using there. And then you're developing a specification, a definition of the product in either in tandem with the AI or on your own. But the idea is that you're having this very thorough planning kind of phase before
Mm-hmm.
you're actually executing the development. And so, like, what I wanted to talk here today is as I was building out a product recently, I kind of had an epiphany. I think to steal your word, Isaac, where I was like, wow, this is a literal different workflow than I was using, 12, 18 months ago, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally different in the sense that, yes, you're still working on code. And if you're working with a team of engineers, you'd be reviewing code. But I think it's like the speed and the ability to iterate even like multiple iterations at the same time. Like the way that I see people using the tools is not how we would have developed 12 months ago. Like it's not even the same from that time period, and it kind of shifts, I think, what's possible. So I think that's the claim is that
Mm-hmm.
here we're making arguments for has any of our tightly held opinions since the recording of these shows
Yeah,
changed with the advent of this technology. um,
got it.
is that fair?
Yeah, I mean the argument's fair. I
Yeah.
think my workflow has changed. But I think it took me a while to realize it, because I think as you were describing the vibe coding flow, I think I used that for too long, like
Mm-hmm,
uh,
mm-hmm.
like Chat GPT versus Claude or some of the other ones. I think even Cursor. I poked around with
Mm-hmm.
some tools, but I had used Chat GPT first,
Right.
and so I did the kind of the what now is probably the boomer version of using
Yeah.
of using
Yeah.
ChatGPT, which is just pasting stuff in, being like, "This didn't
Right.
work. Explain to me why it didn't work." It tells you,
Right.
you know, and then maybe you change your prompt instead of it saying just like "fix this." It's just like I've tried this or that, and something to kind of
Right.
kind of tease out a better answer. But I did realize kind of quick, because I'm an engineer, and I realize dry and don't repeat yourself. I'm like, I'm repeating myself to chat
Yeah.
GPT.
Yep.
And I'm just doing a copy and paste between programs, and this is becoming kind of ridiculous. Someone should make something that will do this workflow for me, and we can automate this.
Right.
So we had an old episode, I don't remember, half a year ago or something, where I was like, this would be a great tool if we could have it talk to itself, uh,
Mm.
repair, like run the tests. Did it pass? No. Why? Take the error message, put it back into itself, generate new code, put it there again. Without me, I could just go do something, go get lunch while it does this,
Right.
and come back and there's stuff, code coverage there. And if there's better code coverage, then it just opens a PR, and you know, if it changes no other behavior and it just adds extra test code coverage, I'm okay with that, even if
Right.
it's sloppy or redundant in some cases.
Right.
So that changed. That idea became true, right? Like, so the agentic thing that you're talking about is like there's essentially a loop that will go and do that thing for you now. I've used that with Claude and to great success. So I have a lot of thoughts about uh, new development using this flow versus like building a new product
Hmm.
versus old development, which is like going back through and changing a legacy system, which has been my career for a while now, and the thing that I care about kind of the most.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm more of a stability guy than a create new things guy.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll stop there though if you have any kind of if other questions before but like I have a
No, I
lot to
guess let
say,
me
so I just
let
want
me
to make sure.
frame. Yeah, let me frame what you're I think you're about to go into, because the current trend I see online, and even talking with non-technical founders when I'm talking about this technology and like the workflow and like how I imagine even like their teams adapting to this, like what's possible.
Mhm.
A lot of people say, well, I can see how that would be useful for brand new development, likely because of their experience with
Hmm.
vibe coding, where you can get, very far very quickly, but you can't actually get all the way, right? And then kind of your claim is that you think that you can actually get more value out of existing code bases. And I think I kind of know where you're going, but I think that's the framing I wanted to set up. So yeah, I would love to hear your kind of, your pattern, what you see as like the value in existing software.
Yeah. So yeah, sure. I'll start with the existing one, and then later, if we remember, I can get back to what I think has a problem with building new things.
Yeah.
Um, so as I mentioned, the tool that I thought would be cool that ended up becoming a thing that existed. So Claude does this currently, and I've only discovered this recently, just because I got so caught up in my own habits that I didn't really reflect on how I was using AI. And
Right.
it took another person showing me, oh, this exists now, to kind of change that paradigm. Um, is when we want to work with legacy systems, oftentimes they are not well test covered. And so making changes to things that aren't test covered is risky. It gets even riskier if you don't really know what the thing does. Well, you know kind of halfway what it does, but not the edge cases. You don't know how it was originally written, or all these other kind of unknowns around this thing. Like unless you 100% know every single nook and cranny that a flow could go through, um, then it becomes very difficult to like fully like honestly test something. um,
Mm-hmm.
so where I found it very useful is generating test code coverage for apps that have none,
Right.
especially when you're trying to what's a good word for it, characterize what the thing is supposed to do when the people who aren't there have left, and
Mm-hmm.
the products or salespeople only know the basic thing that it does, but not these edge cases that were created over time that was lost to history. So the thing, and even when like we would talk about, oh, it could shake our foundations of what rewrite means, because one of our main things is like, why would you rewrite something when you don't really know what it does? Because you get 80% of it rewritten, let's say, and it takes years and blood and sweat and lost money, and then you realize you haven't actually ported over some edge cases that you didn't realize until the very end because you didn't fully understand it because you were working with code that doesn't have full test coverage. So as I started tinkering with these AI tools, I'm like, okay, well, if I work in a legacy system that I'm scared to change, the first thing I do is the changes that I want to make, I try to encapsulate them as best I can and write tests for them, so that
Mm-hmm.
if I make as little changes as I can to the code that's untested, do a ton of testing with unit testing, and then like go back through with the people who know the software better than me if I'm doing a consulting thing. That way I can make sure I'm testing it in the right way. So once I've got better test coverage on that particular bit of code, then I'm like, okay, I've got all these different edge cases tested, all the different flows tested. I can even do a code coverage report on that function, know it's fully tested, and I can make changes and
Right.
not and know that I haven't made regressions. So even if you aren't the one who's going to do the changes, the thing that kind of changed my paradigm or workflow around this thing is I was working with a colleague who was trying to get these AI tools. He was exploring which ones would be useful for the company. Uh, and we have this old code base that's like this shared mounted directory between like it's literally called like shared.
Mm-hmm.
And we mount it on all of our different PHP services whenever we deploy. It is completely untested. And if you make whatever you also we have it was like just bad deployment processes too, but if you just merge to master, it just deploys to all of them. There's no versioning or anything. There's many things wrong with our workflow that we knew we needed to get to eventually. But it's the
Right.
startup, things get pushed to the back.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fully untested. Finally, we introduced PHP unit testing to this thing when we thought we have to get professional about this. Um, but it's one of those things where like so it's not, it doesn't use dependency injection in some areas, so it's like really hard to actually test well without doing a bunch of
Right.
weird hacky things before you want to get to the refactoring part. And so he's like, I'm just going to use AI to write some tests for this. And I'm like, okay, well, don't change anything until
Yeah.
you know that it's completely working. Um, and so he used Claude in like the agentic kind of development process to be like characterize what the directory is supposed to, what the shared thing is supposed to do. Um, it generates, you have like that little README file or whatever the type file is. It
Mm-hmm.
explains everything to Claude, so it has
Yeah.
like a
Right.
context set for it. And then it just started generating tests. And he asked me, "Are these tests good?" And I'm like, "Do they increase coverage?" Because
Right. That's one
right
metric.
now, yeah, right now I don't really care if they're like optimized tests. I don't even care if you have two tests that actually do the same thing. Because right now this
Right.
thing's completely untested. And
Right.
what I care about is not introducing regressions. And introducing bad tests is one thing because we could maybe even use AI to refactor our own tests and say, hey, refactor all the tests you wrote, remove the ones that are redundant. If the code coverage goes down after the refactoring, kill it, redo it again.
Right.
The condition is you can't lose code coverage when you refactor yourself, right?
Yeah.
So my whoa moment was, oh, I can finally make changes to a repo because I can actually make sure the entire flow that we've done here is completely test covered. I could just tell this thing, get at it. I don't want you to stop until this thing is 95%. This huge
Right.
amount of
Right.
code coverage that I care about. And that means I mean that a lot of my job is just making sure we have something in place so I don't goof it up when I go through and try to fix your scaling problem. That saves me a ton of time, right?
Right.
And it does it better than I do. It covers more code than I do. It does it faster than I do. It does it when I'm sleeping if I need it to.
Right.
Um, it can't necessarily address all the business level problems without giving it more and more context. It'll know how to fix
Mm-hmm.
the code, but not yet the exact reason why this thing needs to exist and all these edge cases need to exist. But for me, that's a huge game changer because there's a lot more safety built in, um, and getting it to characterize existing code is something that developers normally can't do if they've
Mm-hmm.
lost context of why it existed and the person who built it left 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah, and it takes tremendous energy. It's a tremendous like cognitive exercise to try to play detective on code that even if it's code you wrote, if it's long, if it's been long enough, you may not even sometimes you write code you don't even recognize that
Yeah.
it's your own code.
Well, that's a good call out too. One thing before I turn it back over to you, it can also scan through the commit history and read all the commits and the changes and why they
Yeah.
happened. And so like, oh, this was a fix because of a regression. And then you do it again. It's like, oh, wait, earlier you tried to fix this last time because it was regression. Now you're going to undo the fix. Are you
Right.
sure? And people don't remember commit history and the message they left from 4 years ago when they did that.
Right.
It will. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then I think what you're touching on there a little bit too is like getting into treating these agents like the same way you would treat a team member from like a governance standpoint. So
Yeah.
it's like one thing I've noticed is even the level of like adherence to like policies and like the code quality and code styling, like it's extremely consistent at generating code that looks homogenous. Like it's like, wow, this all reads the
Yeah.
same as if it's written by one person. Whereas if when you're looking at a code base, with a lot of different team members, you can kind of miss that sometimes. Same thing for tests. I mean, I'm sure you've seen as a principal, different engineers will submit different levels of quality of tests, or they'll focus on different test cases, and that's part of the review process is being like, well, here are some other cases that I think should be covered. But I think I had kind of two major paradigm shifts. One that was quite early on in like what you would call the boomer AI era, like when I was still doing copy paste to Chat GPT, and then coming back over to my editor. One thing that we did early on in my agency that kind of helped us take off was to build a multi-tenant architecture kind of starter kit for AWS, and that allowed us to like really get client projects up and running quickly. And we had different iterations of that over the years. So it was something,
Hmm.
we'd invested, tens of thousands of dollars in at the very least, in order to kind of have this starter kit prepared for new client engagements, to give us a head start. When I got really going in ChatGPT, and we were in the middle of working on our next iteration of that starter kit, and we were spending a half a day per week, like all together, kind of mobbing on it. And we were doing this for like a few months at this point. We were making good progress, and we made a lot of architectural decisions, and like kind of started to get our footing on how we were going to progress through. And then like in one afternoon, I was able to get further than we had gotten, in all that time with just ChatGPT. And I was like, there's no reason to have a starter kit anymore. Like there's no that it
Mm.
just changes even the value, like how we will even approach these projects, because it makes no sense to maintain and then iterate, because new things come out, new frameworks come out, new
Right.
paradigms become kind of dominant. Um, so that's one thing that's changed. Like I'm really glad I never got into the like selling a starter kit or selling a boilerplate to other agency business or to other startups business, because I think that's probably just decimated. Um, so that was my
Hmm.
big first aha, paradigm shift. We don't need to maintain a starter kit anymore, which was a big thing we've been doing for years. Um, the
Okay.
the next shift I had relatively recently when I was building a product, and I was kind of feeling like, I mean, I'm an agency owner, so I had a full time team, and I'm used to kind of understanding the velocity that two or three, maybe even four engineers will have towards a project. And I got to the point in the project I was working on, and I was working on it by myself, where I felt like I was getting the output of three or four team members like at once, and I'm
Hmm.
like, wow, imagine if you did this, but with three or four team members. And it's like now you're doing the work of 20 people, not even exaggerating. Like there's just so much output. I'm sure there's, just like when you're scaling teams, it becomes, it's like a team of teams problem at that point. There's too much going on. So you get a efficiency loss. But just the way that I worked had to change in order to fully capture what the tools could do. And I found the bottleneck to be definition more than anything.
Ooh.
Um,
Okay.
which was interesting. So what I found was it's like I was architecting in real time. Like I was like working through the data model, which how it related to the business, and working through the business cases like in plain English with the chatbot, and then using that to then output a spec, and then the spec would be then what generated the code
Yeah.
from there. And I don't know how much you've gotten into like the governance like with Cloud Code or some of these other tools, but it's really incredible that you can kind of like set the standard. So you can be like, well, we want it to adhere to 12-factor web apps. We want to have authentication follow these protocols. I
Mm.
even have like it even understands like road mapping. So it's like, okay, well, V1 of authentication is going to be this module, but in the future we'll have role based authentication, or we'll have like specific feature specific authorization patterns, right? And so it's like, okay, I'm going to avoid that for this one and move on. Because even just the way that you work with it is so different. And I've heard of some AI companies going to single day sprints because of that, which sounds crazy when you hear
Whoa.
it. But
Yeah.
it's like I can imagine being in the room, and it's like, well, if you've got four or five people doing 4 or 5 days worth of work in a day, you guys need to meet tomorrow to sync it all up again. It's like it's constantly out of sync, is how I would imagine it.
Yeah.
Because I'm even getting that just by myself, right? It's like I think that's what vibe coders experience too. They hit this wall where the bot's making changes across the application that no longer makes sense, because it's making the change here but not in this component, because there's no underlying rules. It doesn't have the context, right?
Yeah.
So that's been a big change for me.
Yeah. Admittedly, I haven't used it a whole lot for new product development or specking things out. The main reason I haven't touched it as much is, I guess there's a couple of reasons. Well, one of them, I can kind of, we all know about AI hallucinations
Mm-hmm.
or even suggestions. Um, if I go through the route of an existing software, I know that it hasn't lied to me because it has only characterized and added coverage for things that existed. It has only locked in my functionality.
Right.
So as long as the test pass and I get better and better coverage, I know I'm not going to regress, and I haven't changed my code at all. I've only added bolstering that progressions can exist. So it's hallucination proof asterisk in that way. I'm sure somebody will find a way to be like, no, but essentially, I feel better about it because like I can prove that we've covered all these different routes that I'm worried about. Then the building something new, I've noticed that it'll give you some interesting suggestions as you want to build something new. And to me, those are very distracting because I might know exactly what I want to build, but they might offer me up something else. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea too. And I
Right.
don't need that right now. I need to execute on my existing thing without coming up with more and more. It's like the product person at the team's like, what if we could do this and that? And then we're like,
Right.
hey, whoa, wait a second. We just need to tackle one thing at a
Right.
time. But it's very exciting. Uh, it comes up with very good standards and ideas, and it does borrow from existing ideologies to help you produce that. But I haven't spent time with it enough to do what you're talking about, to give it more parameters. Because my biggest thing was like, in previous conversations with Jeffrey, we were talking about how as AI gets better at doing literal verbatim things, acceptance criteria,
Hmm.
we become more prompt engineers. We become more people who are like, oh, if I write a perfect enough specs or close to it at least,
Right.
then the thing can make it mostly for me. And so that makes those engineers, we all know at least one like really great smart engineer who's very good at engineering, who's like, well, that wasn't in the acceptance criteria, so I
Right.
didn't implement
Yeah.
it, because they're not using the context that should be obvious. Well, now
Right.
AI is that thing. If you
Right.
can't beat AI, because AI also doesn't have your context, but it can still code just
Exactly.
as well as you can, well, getting there at least, then you're going to be replaced. So you need to be a person who understands that you should ask, why is this doing this? How does this benefit the business? What's the bigger picture in the context of coding to solve this problem, not just to solve this function existing, right? So that kind of bends what the engineer becomes. The engineer has to
Yeah.
become more human focused and product focused, because the rest of it got outsourced.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you can make the argument that that is the most valuable skill remaining. I think it always
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
It was just overshadowed by it's only a piece of the work. And I think now it's becoming like, well, that's pretty much all the work, right? Like, there's still a little bit of work of like monitoring the thing and making sure it's coming out right, but the majority of the work is saying, should we be building this, and if we should, how should it work? You know.
yeah. I agree, because even like working with different engineer levels.
Right.
Junior level people that I've worked with, and when I was a junior, I was just thinking about the acceptance criteria. And
Right.
the higher I got in it, I was like, I get someone would hand me a story. I'm like, why are we working on the story? This is even highest
Right.
priority.
Yeah.
Tell
You
me
start
who
questioning even the
benefits
ticket
this.
itself. Yeah.
Right. Like, so, and I even said we shouldn't even work on any ticket that doesn't have at least one comment from a product person on why this is useful from somebody. Don't just
Right.
take things. We're not line cooks. Don't just take it and start working on it. This is a
Right.
different flow now. We need to beat AI in the human aspect. We're like, or like in the sad Amazon warehouses where you still need humans to sort things, because pattern recognition is still hopefully one thing humans can do
Right.
faster than other things for now. But
Yeah.
it starts teasing out the elements that are actually the most human ones. And back then, the oh, you're a great developer was somebody who could cut through all that bullshit, understand why this
Right.
is helping the company, or oh, I'm working on a team that's like an experimental team. I'm not working on a team that's like the bread and butter of why this company makes money. Maybe I should
Right.
be over there doing that. That's helping the company make more money and job
Right.
security, like those kinds of things. So I think it ends up like floating to the top those kind of human qualities that will end up merging them. Like now I think engineers will have to be product people too. Like you're going to
Hmm.
have a tiny bit of you that's understands the product and the customer benefits as part of your job now. You're not just an engineer who deals with acceptance criteria. A computer can do that now. Or just imagine like when we had binary, then assembly on top of binary, and then C plus
Right. Right.
or
Right.
C and C plus plus. It keeps getting abstracted and more
Yeah.
human readable. And now
Hmm.
we're at that level of human readable of I'm going to tell you what I want and I prompt.
Right.
And now I need to
Yeah.
know what I want and what the
And
customer
I think
wants.
it's even interesting how that will scale. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
I believe that this changes like even the fundamentals of like how you grow a team, because
Oh,
like for example, like 12 months ago, we were not having 20,000 line days regularly, right? Like, I think
right,
you
right.
can very easily achieve a 20K line day in your commits. For people that don't are following at home, like we're talking about how much you committed code in a regular day. I think 6-12 months ago, I would say if you're committing 200 to 2,000 lines per day, you're killing it. That's a good window to be in. But
Right.
nowadays, I mean, you can bang out 2,000 lines of code in a few minutes. It's like it's nothing. So it's like
Yeah.
if you're on a team of say 3 people, and you're having 50,000 line days as a team, how do you keep up with the velocity of the change?
Yeah.
One, but I think that comes back to the before is like, how do you even like front load to get everybody to like, what are the 50,000 lines of code we're going to change to achieve the goal we're trying to achieve? And how do you
Hmm.
synchronize that? And then you can even take that back to the product people before it even gets to the tech. If we've got two different product people pushing out features independently, how do their AIs get the context of every, it's like the volume is changing, like the volume and the velocity is changing. And I don't
Yeah.
think we have the processes right now to deal with that. I can't remember if we were talking about it here, but I think that's part of like maybe where the 1 day sprint is coming from.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we're still catching up
Mm-hmm.
and settling on tools that we want to use, processes that we want to use. Um, and just like me, I was still in the boomer era. Boomer. I didn't get that from anywhere. I just came up with it. I'm gonna go with
Yeah.
it. I was still doing that until recently, because
Yep.
like we form habits and we like our processes, and then letting them go is kind of hard because it's just easier to do that, especially if you're trying to move fast. Like we're already
Right.
always moving
Right.
fast. Now we're moving even faster. Now it's like, oh, Isaac, the way you're doing it, oh, you should learn this new tool. And I'm like, I just learned this one. I don't want to learn a new
Yeah.
one.
I got to slow down
There's
in order
there's
to
still
get that
exactly to
going.
speed
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And so once I did that, and I used this tool, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, whoa, this I can have this thing keep working while I'm away.
Right.
This is great. I could literally take a lunch break and come back, and all the things that I was wanting to do is the 20,000 lines of tests that I wanted to write, and it
Right.
improved the code, and it didn't change the behavior. Great. So we're still adapting. I mean, if I'm still adapting and I'm like use this every day, then I imagine some slower companies or companies with less engineers, especially ones resistant to AI use anyway, it's going to take some time. And there's still like which tools people are settling on that are becoming the standard. Like for the longest time, you had IntelliJ tools that were like that was
Mm-hmm.
the premium tool. Now you have a huge shift towards. Then you had the huge shift towards Visual Code, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people loved VS Code, um, or Visual Studio Editor. Sorry, um, people loved VS. And then they moved to Cursor slowly. And some people are like, I don't like Cursor. I like the built-in AI agents from PHP Storm or whatever, which ones you use for the IntelliJ stuff. And so
Right.
the tools are all around, and they don't work the same. And some of them are trying to get you to adhere to their system. I think Claude kind of wants you to stay in its ecosystem and do things its way. And they're all
Right.
fighting for your control over which workflow you settle on. And then suddenly the workflow changes again, and the model
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
different. And oh, this one's way better. Why are you guys using the old model? And everyone's like, oh, we got to change again, right? So like
Right.
the landscape's shifting so quickly beneath their feet that even the
Right.
things we're speculating right now could get outdated next week.
Right.
But our
Right.
habits
Which
are
is
hard to
crazy coming from
change.
tech. Like tech
Yeah,
already moves fast. And we're saying like even for tech, this is like unprecedented levels of moving fast in change. And I've noticed that
yeah,
same thing too. And
it's
it's
wild.
interesting.
So I don't know if
I was
I forget
making
what question you
yeah.
asked me.
No, yeah, you did
But
answer it. I was just gonna say I was making the claim before the call that, and this is a little bit of a bold claim, but I personally am at the point where I believe when I see professional software engineers, you know, kind of doomsaying about like the AI isn't going to replace them and it doesn't really change their workflow and da 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 da. If you don't think this changes your workflow, then I would argue there's no possible way you've used it in the way that I've used it, because it's like
yeah,
undeniable, And I think once you see that, you can't unsee it, and I think it's fine because I think the where that's coming from is there's a fear that like if this thing comes in and can do my job, how am I relevant? And I think we
yeah,
just talked about how you're still relevant. There
right.
is still a gap between the machine and what the business wants, right? And even if there's a business person, there's still an engineering gap. Like there still has to be kind of a monitor or an oversight. There has to be something guiding
Yeah,
the thing. It's more like a mirror. So I think that's the role.
I, I
It's
think
context.
I think the fun irony in this, and maybe I'll get some heat from it too, is like I don't deny that AI has some serious issues. the hallucinations people were using that lawyers were picking up and citing in court cases like that didn't
Yeah,
exist.
yeah,
People using it for medical stuff, and it writes down the wrong prescription that you're on, or writes down something, it misheard you. You know, like
yeah,
things can go bad. The energy use of it, the
yeah.
replacing
Oh yeah,
customer support people, so your customer support's worse, and you know you're talking to a bot, and you're still not getting the answer. Plenty of things wrong here, but I think over time, in the programming part, I'm not making a claim for the whole world, but
yeah,
maybe, this is ironically making us more human to use this because, and this is why I say this bold claim, because it's the distinguishing factor for you to be a good engineer now is you need to talk to humans and understand why they are hurting. Why are you building this thing? So the more AI I use, the more it can do the basic things for me, the more I'm curious what problem I'm solving, and the more I'm actually interviewing customers and figuring out why is this useful for you. And I can be on long calls. I've been on calls with people who actually are crying because this thing broke again. It's supposed to sync. It lost all of my data. This is my main thing, and I'm panicking. And you guys should fix this thing. If I'm going to go with you guys, I have to have this be reliable. And that's the conversations I did not. Those are the very human, real conversations that were abstracted from me when it was a world of engineer, and the product guy just deals with all that for you, and then he just tells you what to
right,
work on, so you don't have to talk to those pesky humans because
right,
you're an introvert. You don't
right.
want to talk to these
But
people.
you have time now, right? Because that's the thing is you don't not writing the same API for the 500th time.
I
Like
think you have
you know,
time and you have an obligation. Like
right,
my main thing is like, and this is my hope for the future too. I think AI and the AI generated music and all this stuff where it's like things are getting less and less human in the
hmm,
in this virtual space. And then you see
yeah,
kind of like you have I forget the term for the next generation, where like they're intentionally making themselves bored
hmm,
just to get out of the headspace. And you see some people wanting to go to like live music and live venues instead of
yeah,
hearing all this just recorded stuff because they want that human element. I'm hoping that's kind of where we're headed towards. AI is not helping right now in some of these regards, and it's scary because it feels like it's like replacing all these humans, because it is in many cases. But I think if you take the tool that's given to you and change what you're talking about, these workflows that completely change how you're doing things, the thing that's happened to me the most out of the past year is I've used AI more than ever, and I've talked to people more than ever after using AI and realizing, oh, it can do all the tedious work for me while I solve deeper problems and make this person happier and figure out why technology helps their business or whatever. And it's moving towards there. I know it's a bold claim and an optimistic one. I'm sure people are like, well, this is why there's 1,000 things wrong with it. I don't deny there's 1,000 things wrong with it too, but I'm trying
yeah,
to find a couple of good things with it as well.
yeah, yeah. I would even say I heard something. Someone told me this the other day that was I thought really insightful. And I think especially for if we have introverted engineers out there watching, this is something super useful for them. If you're the type of engineer that doesn't like talking to people for some reason, you know, for whatever the reason is,
Mm-hmm.
that probably stems from a fear or a this or a that or a not kind of like knowing what to say. One cool use I've seen for AI is to take your transcripts or your recordings and push them through Claude or ChatGPT or whatever for sentiment analysis. So what I mean is like if you ever had someone say something in a meeting and you couldn't tell if they were saying this or saying that and you're trying to
Yeah.
interpret it and you got caught up in the moment, get a third party opinion, you know, from AI, and now you can kind of practice how you would have handled that better in the future. Because I'm sure everyone's had that experience where you said something in a meeting and you're like, oh, I actually should have said this, or that's not what I meant, or I wonder if that landed how I meant it to land.
Totally.
So I think being able to get that out of your head and like third party kind of work through it on paper and then, you know, practice it. That's one I think way for introverted engineers to get out of that loop.
That's actually helped me socially too. I saw someone arguing back and forth in a thread, and I pasted it, the whole thread into it, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
that's a
confused
good
at where
case.
they're getting at. Like, what am I missing here? And it
Yeah.
got a kind of a cool summary. And then one person left a comment on an MR or PR saying we should do this or that. And I read it, and I'm like, so I took the code snippet and the comment and I said, what is it getting at here? And they explained to me. I'm like, oh, because there's sometimes like there's some social
Yeah.
things I don't pick up on that
Sure.
it can kind of help me tease out too. So there's, and again, that's being more human too. Ironically, using a
Exactly.
robot to explain
Yeah.
through analysis of human history, which
Right.
token makes the most sense to tell you that this is the human thing
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, any yeah, I think we maybe could tie it up here. We got I mean, because of the ever shifting landscape, we will certainly have more topics, and I still have more to say. I just want to make sure our episode doesn't run too long. But before we
Yeah.
wrap it up, is there any other kind of last comments you want to leave for people?
No, I think the moral of the story today is just if you can't beat them, join them. So leverage the tool for what it is, and I'd say that's the lesson today.
Don't be a boomer AR.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I'm Isaac Askew,
Dustin Rea.
and this has been another episode of Never Rewrite.